What's the best real-life example you've seen of the saying, "Give the hardest job to the laziest person because they'll find the easiest way to do it"? At our tech company, upper management couldn't figure out why it took 3 hours to process customer refunds. They hired consultants, conducted studies, and wasted months trying to optimize the system. Meanwhile, Oscar, our office's most notorious slacker, handled refunds in between his Netflix marathons and 2-hour lunch breaks. One day, our CEO came storming into the office. A high-profile client was threatening legal action over a delayed $50,000 refund. He pointed at Oscar, who was half asleep at his desk. "You, process this refund immediately." Everyone expected disaster. Oscar barely looked up from his phone and mumbled, "Give me 5 minutes." The CEO stood there, face getting redder by the second. But exactly 4 minutes later, Oscar announced, "Done." The CEO checked his phone. The client had already confirmed receipt. That's when all hell broke loose. The head of operations demanded to know how Oscar had processed a refund in minutes when their optimized system took hours. Oscar just shrugged and said, "I wrote a script that automates everything." Turns out, while everyone else was following the 47-step refund procedure, Oscar had spent one afternoon coding a program that did it automatically. He'd been using it for months, finishing his work in minutes while pretending it took hours so he could watch YouTube videos. The CEO was furious, not at Oscar, but at everyone else. "You're telling me this kid solved a problem that's cost us millions in lost clients and consulting fees just because he was too lazy to do it the hard way?" Management called an emergency meeting. They made Oscar demonstrate his script, which revealed how ridiculously overcomplicated our system was. His program bypassed 30 unnecessary approval steps, 4 redundant verification processes, and 3 separate departments. The next day, Oscar got called into the CTO's office. Instead of being fired for bypassing protocols, they offered him a promotion to head a new automation department. His first project? Finding other inefficient processes to streamline. Oscar accepted on 3 conditions. He could work from home, have flexible hours, and keep his mini fridge. The company agreed instantly. Within 6 months, his team of self-proclaimed lazy programmers had automated 70% of our manual processes. But here's where it gets interesting. The other departments started sabotaging Oscar's projects. They'd intentionally break his automated systems and claim they were unreliable. People were terrified his efficiency improvements would make their jobs obsolete. Oscar didn't even bother fighting back. He just called another meeting and pulled up a screen showing every employee who deliberately corrupted his code, along with timestamps and their digital fingerprints. He'd automated the process of catching people who tried to break his automation. The saboteurs got fired, but Oscar hired them all for his team. "They're smart enough to hack my systems," he said, "but too lazy to do it without leaving traces." Perfect combination. 3 years later, our company's processing times are down 90%. Oscar's department has saved the company $50 million in operational costs. He still takes 2-hour lunches and watches Netflix at his desk. But now he does it while his automated systems handle work that used to take hundreds of people. Last month, a rival company offered Oscar triple his salary to jump ship. He declined by sending an automated response. Writing resignation letters is too much work. The CEO immediately doubled his pay and added a second mini fridge to his office. Yesterday, I overheard our CFO complaining that Oscar's entire department seems to do nothing all day. The CEO just laughed and said, "Last quarter, their nothing saved us more money than every other department combined." 6 months after this conversation, I was sitting in the lunchroom when Oliver, one of Oscar's original saboteurs, rushed in with his face completely drained of color. "It's happening," he stammered, gripping the back of a chair. The board finally caught on. Turns out our parent company had noticed what Oscar's department was doing. They wanted to replicate the model across all their subsidiaries. The only problem? They needed Oscar to personally oversee implementing automation in 17 different companies across the country. Remote work and flexible hours weren't gonna cut it for a nationwide efficiency overhaul. "Oscar's gonna flip," Oliver muttered. "He literally built a system to order food delivery without picking up his phone. They're asking him to travel." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. Word spread fast. People were placing bets on whether Oscar would quit or accept what everyone was calling the nightmare promotion. His current salary was rumored to be around $80K plus stock options. The new position? $500K base plus unlimited travel budget. and executive benefits. At 2:55, Oscar strolled into the boardroom wearing his signature outfit, faded jeans, company t-shirt from 2019, and those beat-up sneakers he'd been rocking since day one. The board members, all in their pristine suits, shifted uncomfortably. Our CEO tried explaining the opportunity, how Oscar could revolutionize their entire corporate structure, save hundreds of millions, transform the industry. Oscar listened for exactly 3 minutes, then interrupted. Counteroffer. I'll build you a system that can implement automation anywhere, automatically, but I'm not leaving this building. The board members exchanged confused glances. You want us to pay you $500,000 to build something that replaces your own travel? 500,000, Oscar corrected. Plus I get to hire a team of 20, full creative control, and unlimited budget for R&D. He yawned dramatically. The alternative is you spend the next 5 years trying to manually replicate what I did here, probably screw it up, and waste billions in the process. The CFO, who'd been calculating furiously on his iPad, looked up with wide eyes. The projected savings from implementing your system company-wide would exceed $2 billion annually. He turned to the board. At this scale, any delay costs us millions. Per day. Oscar leaned back in his chair, feet up on the conference table. Clock's ticking. I got a Netflix series to finish. 10 minutes later, Oscar had his deal. But the real kicker came when they asked how soon he could start building this automated implementation system. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and said, "Already done. I built it last year when I got bored during the Christmas party." The head of HR nearly choked. "You're telling us you've had a multi-billion-dollar solution sitting on your laptop this whole time?" "Not my laptop," Oscar grinned. "Company server. Files called Definitely Not Important XE. Been testing it on our system for months. That's how we've been so efficient." The next week, Oscar rolled up to work in a brand new Tesla. When I asked him about the fancy car, he just shrugged. "Needed something comfortable for my 5-minute commute to the office parking lot. Plus, autopilot lets me watch shows during the drive." His new team started arriving the following Monday. 20 of the most notorious lazy employees from across the company's branches. People who'd been written up for sleeping at their desks, who'd spent more time building elaborate systems to avoid work than actually working. Oscar had handpicked each one based on efficiency potential. The first hire was Mila, who'd been fired from accounting for rigging the photocopier to automatically scan and sort documents. "They called it unauthorized modifications," she explained over coffee. "I called it not standing at a copier for 4 hours. Then came Blake, who'd figured out how to automatically generate weekly status reports by scraping emails for keywords. His system was so good, his manager nominated him for Employee of the Month without realizing the reports were completely automated. By month 3, Oscar's laziness labs had transformed from a joke to the most valuable division in the company. They weren't just automating tasks. They were eliminating entire job categories that shouldn't have existed in the first place. The payroll department went from 25 people to 3. HR's hiring process that used to take 6 weeks now took 6 hours. Even the executive assistants were nervous as Oscar's team created Human Free, an AI system that scheduled meetings, managed calendars, and even drafted emails with each executive's writing style. But the real chaos started when Oscar automated the automation itself. He created Lazy AI, an artificial intelligence that could analyze any business process and design automation solutions. The board was ecstatic. Other departments were terrified. "You're building yourself out of a job," I pointed out during one of our increasingly rare lunch breaks. Oscar raised an eyebrow. "Building myself out of work is literally my job description." He wasn't wrong. Lazy AI's first autonomous project was streamlining the company's research division. It identified 17 redundant research projects, highlighted 3 promising innovations that had been overlooked, and suggested team reassignments that cut costs by 40% while increasing output by 60%. The research director went from hating Oscar to demanding he automate everything. "I spent 20 years thinking we needed more researchers," she confessed. "Turns out we needed researchers doing different research." That's when things got weird. Other companies started calling, not to hire Oscar. Everyone knew he'd never leave. They wanted to rent his brain. Google offered $10 million for a weekend consultation. Amazon wanted to buy Lazy AI outright for $500 million. Oscar turned them all down with automated responses. Currently too lazy to change companies. Success requires too much effort. Becoming a billionaire sounds exhausting. The board tried to pressure him to at least license Lazy AI to competitors. They'd made a deal with him, but they still wanted to capitalize. Oscar's response was to unveil Mega Lazy, a system that could predict and address corporate inefficiencies before they even occurred. Why sell last year's innovation, he asked the board, when I can keep building tomorrow's convenience? Mega Lazy's first prediction? A mass resignation wave hitting tech companies within 6 months. Employees across the industry were burning out from excessive meetings, pointless protocols, and busy work that lazy AI had identified as universally inefficient. People are finally realizing they're working hard to look busy, Oscar explained. Feet propped up on his standing desk, he'd converted to a sitting desk. But when your actual work takes 20 minutes, sustaining 8 hours of performance theater is exhausting. Sure enough, within 3 months, major tech companies reported unprecedented turnover rates. Employees were quitting without new jobs, lined up, citing efficiency fatigue and performative productivity burnout. Our company, meanwhile, saw turnover drop by 70%. Employees actually looked forward to Monday mornings. Productivity metrics were through the roof, despite people seeming to work less. The breaking point came when a Fortune 500 company's CEO had a public meltdown during an earnings call. "We've spent $2 billion on productivity tools," he ranted, "and my employees are less productive than ever." Meanwhile, some guy who naps at his desk has figured out the secret to human happiness. That guy napping at his desk was, of course, Oscar. He missed the entire earnings call because he was testing his latest invention, WorkNap, a system that optimized deep work cycles by scheduling strategic nap breaks for maximum cognitive performance. Same week, Harvard Business Review requested an interview with Oscar. They wanted to study his revolutionary approach to workplace efficiency. Oscar's response was peak Oscar. "I built a bot that answers interview questions. It's trained on 10 years of TED Talks. Can't you tell the difference?" The reporter admitted she couldn't. Oscar's bot had been answering email interviews for months, generating insightful quotes about productivity, innovation, and the future of work. The prestigious business journal had been publishing AI-generated wisdom without realizing it. But the real masterstroke came when Oscar decided to solve the company's biggest remaining inefficiency: meetings. He created Meeting Mortician, an AI that attended all virtual meetings, summarized key points, identified action items, and sent follow-ups, all while the actual participants could focus on deep work. The first week, meeting attendance dropped 90%. By week 2, employees reported their most productive quarter on record. By week 3, executives who'd built careers on running meetings were quietly being restructured into advisory roles. The boardroom confrontation was inevitable. "You're dismantling our entire management structure," the chairman accused. Oscar didn't look up from his phone. "No, I'm automating the parts that were already automated. You just didn't realize it." He pulled up a screen showing meeting transcripts from the past year. "Look familiar? Same agendas, same talking points, same decisions. Your managers have been running the exact same meeting with different slide decks for 12 months. My AI just made it honest." The chairman's face went through several shades of red before settling on a sickly green. "So what do you suggest? Fire all our managers?" "Promote them," Oscar replied to everyone's surprise. "Give them actual problems to solve. Hard stuff. The creative decisions, the human elements, the things AI can't do. Stop wasting brilliant minds on tasks a $50 chatbot could handle." 6 months later, our company restructured entirely around Oscar's philosophy. Managers became innovators. Meetings became optional. Results became the only metric that mattered. The craziest part? Company revenue doubled. Employee satisfaction hit all-time highs. The press called it a revolution. Academics wrote papers about the Oscar effect. But Oscar himself remained unchanged. Still showed up at 11 a.m., still left at 3 p.m. Still watched Netflix at his desk while his creations reshaped corporate America. Last month, Time magazine put him on their cover. The man who solved work. Oscar's only comment: "They AI generated that photo. I was too lazy to sit for it." Today, as I watched Oscar demonstrate his latest creation, Slack Slayer, a tool that automatically converts unnecessary Slack messages into focused work time, I realized something profound. We've spent a century optimizing humans to serve systems. Oscar just flipped it. He optimizes systems to serve humans. His laziness isn't avoiding work, it's refusing to participate in its waste. The sales team was skeptical during the demo. What if someone sends an urgent message? They asked. Oscar's response was pure gold. I define urgent as something that can't wait for you to finish actual work. If it's truly urgent, they'll find a way to reach you. If not, it's just another distraction masquerading as importance. Within a week, the sales team reported their highest conversion rates in company history. Turns out, uninterrupted focus on actual selling beats constant message monitoring. But the real twist came when a startup offered to buy Oscar's entire automation portfolio for $5 billion. The catch? They wanted exclusive rights. No more helping. Our company. The board panicked. They called an emergency session. They were ready to negotiate, to grovel, to beg Oscar to stay. Oscar just leaned back and grinned. Already handled it. I automated the negotiation process 3 months ago. The startup's AI has been talking to my AI this whole time. Neither human company knew. He pulled up chat logs between two AIs haggling over his worth. The startup's AI had eventually offered $7 billion. Oscar's AI had countered by asking for a lifetime supply of pizza and continued employment at the current lazy-friendly terms. Wait, our CEO sputtered. AI systems can negotiate multi-billion-dollar deals without human oversight? Only the lazy ones, Oscar replied. Took me a weekend to code. Hardest part was teaching them to recognize corporate BS. The negotiations continued for another month. During that time, Oscar unveiled his magnum opus, BossBot 3000, an AI CEO that could run entire companies based on principles of minimal bureaucracy and maximum efficiency. Why have human CEOs make decisions based on outdated business school theories, he announced, when AI can optimize based on real-time data and actual results? The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Was Oscar suggesting he replace our CEO? The CEO himself asked the question everyone was afraid to voice. Are you saying I should fire myself? Oscar shook his head. The opposite. I'm saying you could actually be a human being again. Do the inspiring, the vision casting, the impossible stuff. Let BossBot handle the spreadsheets and status meetings. 3 weeks later, our CEO appeared on CNBC looking more relaxed than he had in years. Thanks to new automation systems, I've gone from managing numbers to imagining futures. I'm not working less, I'm working on what actually matters. The interviewer looked confused. But don't you worry about losing touch with day-to-day operations, not when the day-to-day runs better without me, he replied with a grin that reminded me of Oscar's signature smirk. Meanwhile, Oscar's next project was already in motion, EduLaze, an educational platform that would teach kids to be productively lazy from elementary school onward. We spent 12 years training humans to follow arbitrary rules, Oscar explained, while coding with one hand and gaming with the other. Imagine if we taught them to question every inefficiency instead. The pilot program launched in 50 schools. Traditional teachers were horrified. Kids were learning to code automation scripts instead of doing repetitive math worksheets. They were designing efficiency experiments instead of memorizing facts Google could provide instantly. But the results? Kids reporting higher engagement, better retention, and, most controversially, lower stress levels and more free time. One teacher broke ranks to praise the program. I've been teaching for 20 years. I've never seen students so excited to solve problems. They're not trying to get the work done. They're trying to figure out if the work should be done at all. The Department of Education launched an investigation. They couldn't understand how students could be learning effectively while apparently working less. Oscar's response? He automated the entire defense process, creating a bot that answered every bureaucratic inquiry with perfectly cited educational research supporting his methods. That's when I realized Oscar's endgame wasn't just about transforming one company or even one industry. He was rewriting the fundamental relationship between humans and work itself. One afternoon, I found him staring out the window while his favorite lo-fi playlist hummed in the background. You know what the real tragedy is? He asked, not turning around. For decades, we've been measuring potential by how hard people work. We've missed out on solutions from millions of people who just wanted to find an easier way. I thought about all the innovations that had come from Oscar's deliberate laziness. The refund automation that saved millions, the meeting elimination, that boosted productivity. The AI systems that handled routine thinking so humans could focus on creative thinking. We built a society that rewards performing work, he continued, not achieving results. Then we wonder why we're exhausted and nothing really changes. Last week, Oscar's phone rang during lunch. It was the president's office. They wanted him to head a special task force on government efficiency. Oscar put them on speaker and set down his phone to eat his sandwich while they talked. The voice on the other end outlined a plan to modernize federal systems, eliminate bureaucratic waste, potentially save taxpayers billions. When they finished their pitch, Oscar chewed thoughtfully for a moment. "I'll build you a system that can run the entire task force autonomously. I'll train it on government data, efficiency best practices, and my own automation protocols. You won't need me physically present at all." The pause on the other end was lengthy. "That's not exactly traditional, neither is efficiency," Oscar replied. "You want to transform government or just look like you're trying?" 3 months. Later, GovEfficient was processing Freedom of Information requests in hours instead of months, identifying redundant agencies and suggesting budget reallocations based purely on outcome data. Civil servants initially resisted, then became converts when they realized automation freed them from soul-crushing paperwork to focus on actual public service. The scary part? Oscar had built GovEfficient in a week, then spent 2 months making it run slow enough that politicians could understand what was happening. Change management, he'd explained with air quotes. People need time to adjust to being efficient. It's traumatic for them. Today marks exactly 5 years since Oscar automated that first refund. Our company's market cap has increased 10x. Other corporations are desperately trying to hire Oscarologists, efficiency experts trained in his methods. But the real revolution is in the workforce itself. A new generation of workers openly identifies as productively lazy. They wear it like a badge of honor. Job listings now advertise positions for efficiency innovators and automation philosophers. The culture shift is profound. Performance reviews now include metrics like unnecessary tasks eliminated and processes simplified. Managers are praised for making their team's work obsolete. Oscar himself continues operating at his own pace. He upgraded from 1 mini fridge to 3. He started a podcast called Automating While Sleeping, which he records during his afternoon naps. Every episode is entirely AI-generated based on his sleep talk patterns. When asked about his plans for the next 5 years, Oscar just grins. "I'm automating the concept of planning. Too much work to think that far ahead. But I've seen his code repository. There's a folder labeled End Work 2035 containing hundreds of files. Whatever he's building, it's bigger than anything we've seen. And somehow, impossibly, he's doing it all between Netflix episodes and power naps." The true genius wasn't in the automation. It was in Oscar recognizing that human laziness, properly channeled, might be the most powerful force for innovation in history. Last week's staff meeting ended with a standing ovation when Oscar's latest system eliminated the need for staff meetings. As people filed out, the CEO pulled me aside. "You know what the board's biggest fear was when we first promoted Oscar? They thought his laziness would be contagious." He gestured around the office at employees calmly focused on meaningful work, automated systems handling the rest. Turns out that's exactly what we needed, and somewhere across the office, feet propped up on that famous desk, Oscar was already innovating our next obsolescence.